Hello and good weekend to you. This is Doc Severson for the ReadySetCrypto Premium Newsletter Market Update for Sunday, December 23rd. What we have seen in the crypto markets in the last, let's call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. So the last week of crypto has been especially important. Now, as I look at Bitcoin, we do not have any kind of change in polarity. We do have a swing off the bottom on pretty good volume, but looking at this, we don't have a change in polarity yet. However, before I lose you, I do want to say that things have changed, and I'm willing to look at this with a fresh perspective because of something else which has recently happened in the financial markets. And I'm going to stay on the weekly chart, and I'm going to go over to look at the NASDAQ 100 index. The NASDAQ 100 index on the weekly chart, you can see how horrible that this week has been through NASDAQ. And so this shows us a couple of things. First of all, there is zero correlation right now between anything in at least the US stock indices and cryptocurrencies, which is important. If we had 100% correlation between the equity indices or equity stocks and cryptocurrencies, what's the point, right? What would the point be of cryptocurrencies other than they're just a unique form of investment and they represent something? But as far as a tradable instrument, what I care about is the fact that they are not correlated right now. Now, we've seen some instances of correlation. Now, when I say correlation, when one goes down, the other goes down, right? So they're correlated, they're tied at the hip. They are not. That's my point today, is that they're not tied at the hip at all. One went significantly down, cryptocurrency went up for the week. Now, back here in October, we did have some correlation going on. And I don't think that this was natural correlation. I just think that what we had was we had the equity markets going down, and as we started to get into margin calls and redemptions, things like that, basically what a margin call is saying from the broker, hey, you better come up with some cash right now or we are going to liquidate everything in your account. And what you end up doing is shuffling through every asset that you have and saying, okay, what in here can I sell? Oh, all right, here's this cryptocurrency portfolio. Do I care about it or not? Maybe now is a good time to get rid of this. And so I think there was a little bit of correlation and panic selling, and that affected secondarily the crypto market back then. And we're always going to have that to some degree as long as we have trillions of dollars in equity markets and only billions of dollars in cryptocurrency markets. There's always going to be, to some degree, the tail wagging the dog when it comes to that. But now this is a different deal. This is something different. This is actually representing a full bear market metric. Now we're down over 20% in the NASDAQ 100. We're almost down. We're down 15 to 18% or so. I forget exact numbers for the S&P 500 and the Dow, but certainly the Russell 2000 is now down, I think, 25 or 26%. So some of the riskier assets are down significantly from their all-time highs and are starting that transition into a bear market, which, quite frankly, crypto already went through months ago. So now we have crypto looking as sort of like this safe harbor because it's already gone through all the battle damage. It's already down significantly on the year. And investors, remember this. I forget who said this, but there is no bubble in money. Money never goes through a recession. It's always moving from one place to another like a giant shell game. And so when equity markets are getting hammered like this, people are going to look for something to put their assets into. And maybe, just maybe, cryptocurrency might be looking very, very attractive right now. So let's go through the top 10 on crypto. And we'll go from the weekly chart back to the daily chart, give us a little bit more detail here and see what's going on. Now, I have been on record saying lately that this is not capitulation, and we may not get that capitulation. I want to see that waterfall decline into a massive volume spike that shows that everybody is basically given up. And maybe what we did have was sort of a group capitulation over this. If this ends up being the low, then this was sort of a death by 1,000 cuts low instead of one massive capitulation spike in volume. Now, I will look at this differently once we start to see the price coming above about 4,500 or so. 4,500 to me is the most recent lower high, and if the price rises above that lower high and prints a higher high, then that's the very first part of a change in polarity, at least at the daily chart. That would be significant. Now, again, what I've postulated is that it's highly likely that after this amount of technical damage that we may run into a big basing pattern down here. This is why I believe, and I've talked about this before, that 2019 will be the year of the trader. We're going to get a lot of trading swings up and down. This is not going to be the year of the hodler, I don't think. I think it's too early for that. Bear markets usually don't stop and reverse. They usually inflict a little bit of damage first. They leave a wake of turbulence behind them, and then finally, they do lift off the bottom. But it normally takes at least a year and a half for us to do that. So I could get on board with this. This to me is fine. I'm totally comfortable with that because all we want as traders is just volatility. Now, investors are going to find this to be very frustrating. An investor to me is somebody that's basically looking at something from a fundamental perspective, try to get in at the best price possible, and then holding on for dear life. But please, even if you're going to hodl, make sure that you have some type of stop or exit defined. So to me, trend trading is hodling with structure. Never just buy and hodl without any kind of sense of exit for this, because at bottoms like this, you will rethink your entire function in life. And that's no fun. That's no fun to do that if you don't have some sense of what you should do, because defining the exit is not necessarily for when times are good. It's more for when times are bad. And that's when emotional decisions will cause you great financial harm. Okay, so let's keep going back through the top 10 here. So I've just got the recent top 10. So Bitcoin to me, until it gets above 4,500, is starting into that basing pattern, which is good. That's good. We're starting to see movement and not just day after day of just drip, 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 bamboo torture like this. Actual movement, actual swings to the upside are things that we can trade within. Watch for the descending patterns breaking to the upside. Watch for, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, we saw all kinds of positive divergence showing up on here. We saw a channel breaking the channel. So there's all kinds of tricks that we can use, tools to identify a high probability entry into a swing to the upside. And if you do have opportunities, if you do have futures contracts or any kind of long-term swaps that you can use to trade to the downside, go for it. I mean, the same thing works to the downside. We'll more than likely have a lot of volatility up or down in the near future. Okay, so that's Bitcoin. Bitcoin, and you can see Bitcoin, if we go out to the weekly chart, this is not an uptrend yet, guys. It's just a good week. It's a good week on pretty good volume, not great volume, but pretty good volume in the context of a horrible week in the equity markets. All right, let's stay in the weekly chart until we have to move in. Here's Ripple, and right now Ripple is still in a weekly downtrend, even though the Ripple army would love to have me believe differently, but this is still a weekly downtrend, actually more of just a sideways consolidation pattern. Now, if we bring this out to the Chapin Bollingers, we're going to start to see big energy. It's building up a lot of potential energy here. This means that the next move in Ripple could be fairly significant. So what we need to do is to watch our boundaries here for where this channel is, especially as this energy level gets over 55 or so. This is typically when we start to see the big breaks, is when we start to see a high degree of potential energy showing up on the CHOP index, and then a break above recent highs. That could be worth something. Now, if we go into the daily chart, again, don't get so focused on, you miss the forest for the trees, right? This is the problem. If you're only looking at one time frame, you don't really have a sense of context as to what's going on here. This is still a primary downtrend. This is only just a lower high setting up in a primary downtrend. Now, what would change that is if we came down here, printed a higher low and then a higher high, then we have a reversal on the daily chart. That would eventually spill over to the weekly chart. But again, this is just going to create a swing up on the weekly chart until the weekly chart itself prints a higher low, higher high. Then we have something to work with there. And that will more than likely occur on the next break if this is destined to go higher. Okay, kind of the same thing for Ethereum. Let's go out to the weekly chart here and see what we have. Again, pretty good volume, not a massive move higher. Right now, it seems to have defended $100 per coin pretty well, but I'm just not seeing massive demand into there. If this was a massive demand, I mean, this is not this. This is not this. This is not the November pump. This is just an okay week on pretty good volume. Bitcoin Cash, kind of the same thing here on the weekly chart. Lots of big volume here, but not really much to speak of it. To me, that's more to speaking where the volume in this area was just so benign that anything that does occur here makes it stand out. But right now, looking at the weekly chart, we can clearly see that we don't have an uptrend yet. That is a swing. That's the beginning of a swing. Hardly even the beginning of a swing. That's just a small green weekly candle. That's about it. Let's look at EOS. Kind of the same thing here. Not a whole lot of time that we need to spend on this one. Here is Stellar. And let's take a look at Stellar. I want to make sure that we're not missing this one because many people trade this one via BTC. And that's pretty much the same thing that we're seeing here. So again, not a whole lot. Litecoin, not much going on here. Here is Bitcoin SV, and let's look into the daily chart on this one. This does have some potential. This has a little bit of potential here. We are printing a higher high at exhaustion. So what I would want to see from this is a consolidation, build up the energy, and then break to a new high. And that's going to have to be pretty much above the $136 to $140 level for that to break a new high. But it's got to build up energy first. We don't want to chase this one if it's just going to break out here without having the requisite energy for that. Now here's something that I think is technically very interesting. This is Tron, and Tron clearly has that pattern that we're looking for. Primary downtrend, and actually what I like about this is that Tron's chart patterns are actually pretty darn good here because what we're seeing is a major bear flag, kind of more of a triangle bear flag kind of pattern. And let's go out to the weekly chart because I think the weekly chart will show that a little bit better. Okay. Yep, there it is. There's the bear flag showing up on the weekly chart, which is right here. Okay, let me illustrate that. So that's the weekly chart bear flag breaking down through that bear flag, going in the direction that it should have. And notice the big energy as it breaks the bear flag. You start to see these things, you put two and two together, you start to see these patterns. So chart patterns in line with the energy values, which is rule number 4. Range contraction leads to range expansion. In this case, it went to the downside, which is the direction that it should have from a probability perspective. But now we're seeing a nice big weekly swing up. Now, is that an uptrend yet? No, it's not. It's just an upswing. Just an upswing on the weekly chart. But here's the cool thing. If we go down to the daily chart on Tron, this is actually printed a decent higher low. That's a higher low, higher high. We do have a change in polarity to an uptrend on the daily chart for Tron. Now, this is into exhaustion. So what I'd like to see this do is once again kind of consolidate out, flag out in this area. And then we're looking at this versus the US dollar. I'd like to see consolidation back up above 55. And then as it breaks above 25 cents, that might be a good breakout entry. And that would be into a continuation of this weekly swing higher. Okay, notice the breakout level. That would also make it a weekly uptrend, or at least the beginning of a weekly uptrend if we started to print a higher high in the weekly chart. To fully confirm that, we need a higher low and then a higher high confirmation after that point. Let's finish this out with Cardano. I'm looking at the weekly chart here on Cardano. You can see kind of the same thing. Like, okay, there's a green candle on pretty good volume here, but this is such an oppressive weekly downtrend. It's going to take some work to get this thing to actually reverse and start printing higher highs and higher lows. And I think this one, as well as anyone else, shows you the point that I keep trying to make lately, is everybody just, they see green candles and they're programmed through either their subreddit or through Twitter or through somebody else on YouTube. Everybody just keeps saying, hey, buy the dip, hodl, 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 buy the dip. As if those are the only two skills that you would ever need to trade cryptocurrencies. What is low can go lower. That's my problem here. And I've been saying this all year, is that don't buy the dip. Don't average down. Don't buy the dip, don't average down. Because if you've been doing that, all of a sudden you're sitting down here at Cardano, like your cost basis is still way up here. Your average cost basis, you've averaged down, but it's still way up here. You're going to have to go a long way higher before you're going to break even. And guess what people do when they finally get to break even? They kneel down, they genuflect, and they say, if I could just get back to break even, I will sell out of this thing. And that's what happens. You get so much overhead supply that it's difficult to break out because there's so many people that have bought the dip, averaged down, have a high cost basis. They're just praying and trying to get out of this thing. And that's what creates that overhead supply from people that bought in way too early. Now, I got a question the other day, from somebody that says, well, what do you expect me to do? Just sit around and wait until this starts to trend higher? And yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking you to do. Wait until it starts to trend higher. You're not going to lose that much edge off of the bottom. Meanwhile, you're going to save your capital from going underwater in case this decides to go lower. If there's more supply than demand, it will go lower. Now, again, I can't see what's going to happen in the future. I don't know anybody offhand that does either. So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if the equities market is going to fall into just a horrible bear market and if it's going to drag everything else down with it, or I don't know if it's just going to create so much uncertainty that people look at cryptocurrency and say, hey, maybe that's an opportunity for me. And that's what I'm hoping that we do see. Okay. But what I want you to do is I want you to wait for the signals that show us that people are accumulating again. Just one green candle does not necessarily mean that people are accumulating again. And just because you lose a little bit of edge off the bottom doesn't really mean much of anything if this thing is going to be this much higher within the next few months or years. You're not going to miss this little bit down here. Again, I keep saying there's no medal that's given out. Nobody's going to give you a medal to hang around your neck and say, oh, I got the very bottom tick. That's just an ego thing. That's an ego thing, and that's an impatience thing from people that just can't wait any longer to get going with this. They want the market to go higher, so they think, well, if I buy and you buy and we all buy, then this is going to drive this higher. Guess what, guys? It doesn't work that way. So in summary today, I like what I'm seeing. Seriously, I mean, when the equities markets are getting just brutalized, just being taken out back behind the woodshed and shot, and the cryptocurrency markets overall are in accumulation, I think that's a good sign. I think that we're perhaps starting to see the rotation. Now, again, I'm not so delusional as to think that we're going to be doubling or going back to 20K Bitcoin in the next couple of months. That is not going to happen in anyone's fantasies. However, what we can start to see is this base building. We gotta set the foundation for the next rally. And the base building typically takes longer than most people really want to give it credit for. This is why I'm going to be focusing on catching these swings up and down, and trading them with futures contracts, which is the ideal instrument to do so. Since we really don't have a good set of options contracts yet, we don't have good options derivatives in the crypto space in 2019. As 2019 rolls over, I'm not real happy with what's out there, but I am optimistic that we will get these at some point within the next year. All right, that is it for today's report. Tomorrow we will put out an early report, and look for that much earlier than normal because we have some family stuff going on. So we got to get the report out there. And then we are going to be taking Tuesday off for Christmas holiday. So no video, no newsletter on Tuesday, but we'll be back in full force on Wednesday to catch up with you guys. All right. See you then. Have a great weekend.